They called me an embarrassment in the family group chat, and every single person, my parents, my brother, even distant relatives, hit the laughing emoji. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just typed one word. Sure. You see, my family had spent years assuming I was unemployed, drifting through life without direction or ambition. They had no idea what I actually did for a living, and I'd stopped trying to tell them a long time ago. But when my brother's wife walked into that conference room for the biggest deal of her career, confident and condescending as ever, she looked up at the head of the table and saw me sitting there. The scream that came out of her mouth echoed through the entire floor. If you're watching this video right now, drop a comment telling me where you're from, hit that like button, and subscribe to hear more stories. The notification lit up my phone screen at exactly 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday evening. I was sitting in my minimalist apartment, legs tucked beneath me on the cream sofa, a cup of chamomile tea cooling in my hands. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city glittered like scattered diamonds, oblivious to the small devastations happening in apartments just like mine. The family group chat. The one I'd muted months ago but never had the courage to leave entirely. Something, maybe masochism, maybe hope, made me check it that night. I shouldn't have opened it. But I did. Tessa. Ryan, about the anniversary dinner Saturday. Don't bring Emily. She's an embarrassment. Seriously. I don't want her there making everyone uncomfortable. My breath caught. Not from shock, really. More from the confirmation of something I'd always suspected but never seen spelled out so plainly, so casually, as if my worth could be summarized in a single text message sent without a second thought. Then came the reactions. One by one, they populated beneath her message like a firing squad of casual cruelty. Each notification was a small knife. Mom. Laughing emoji. Dad. Thumbs up. Aunt Linda. 3 laughing emojis and a skull emoji. Cousin Jennifer. Crying laughing emoji. Ryan, my brother, my own blood, the boy I'd shared a childhood with, added a simple, yeah, probably for the best. She doesn't really fit in any way. I stared at the screen until the words blurred together. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race into panic. I just sat there in the amber glow of my reading lamp, feeling the weight of being unwanted settle over me like a familiar coat I'd worn too many times before. Heavy. Threadbare. Still somehow surprising in its ability to hurt. The thing about being dismissed by your own family is that it doesn't happen all at once. It's not a single violent rejection. It's gradual, like erosion. 1,000 small moments where you're talked over at dinner, where your accomplishments are met with polite disinterest or thinly veiled skepticism, where your presence becomes something to manage rather than celebrate, where you slowly realize you're not part of the inner circle, you're the obligation they tolerate. I read Tessa's message 3 more times. Each word was chosen carefully, I realized. Embarrassment. Not busy or unavailable. Not even awkward. An embarrassment. Something to be hidden. Something shameful. I set the phone down on the glass coffee table and stared at the reflection of my ceiling light in the darkened screen. My throat felt tight, but no tears came. I'd cried over my family before. Tonight, I felt something different. I picked up my phone again and typed one word. Sure. Simple.
Clean.
No explanation, no defense, no plea for reconsideration. Just acceptance. I hit send and set the phone face down on the coffee table. Then I took a long, slow sip of tea and let the silence of my apartment wrap around me like a blanket. Inside, something cold and crystalline was forming. Not anger exactly. Something sharper, cleaner, more clarifying. The fog that had kept me tethered to their approval was finally lifting. And underneath it was a simple, undeniable truth. I didn't need them anymore. Maybe I never had. I haven't always been this calm. There was a time when I would have called Ryan immediately, voice shaking, demanding to know why. There was a time when I would have shown up at that dinner anyway, desperate to prove I belonged, clutching a bottle of wine and a forced smile. But that was before. Before I spent 3 years caring for Dad after his massive stroke while Ryan and Tessa jetted off to Cancun, then Italy, then Thailand, their Instagram feeds a constant stream of turquoise water and sunset cocktails. Before I sat alone in sterile hospital waiting rooms at 2 in the morning, fielding nurses' questions about advance directives and DNR orders, while my brother sent postcards with chirpy messages about gelato and gondolas. "Emily will handle it," Mom had said back then, as if my life were merely a convenient solution to their inconvenience. As if I didn't have dreams, plans, a future that mattered. I was 23 years old. I'd just been accepted into a prestigious graduate program in strategic development at Northwestern. Full scholarship. It was everything I'd worked for. I'd already found an apartment in Chicago, had my course schedule printed out, had started researching professors I wanted to work with. I deferred for a year. Then Dad's recovery was slower than expected, so I deferred again. By the third year, when I finally called the admissions office, they told me my spot had been given to someone else. The opportunity had dissolved like sugar in water. Ryan never acknowledged it. Not once. Not even a thank you, or a "I know this is hard." At Dad's welcome home party, the one Mom insisted on throwing to celebrate his miraculous recovery, Tessa had draped herself over my brother's arm like an expensive accessory, showing off photos from Santorini on her phone. The powder blue houses, the infinity pools, the sunset dinners. "Some people really know how to live," she'd said, her eyes sliding past me like I was part of the furniture. "Life's too short to waste it, you know?" I was wearing the same clothes I'd worn to the hospital that morning. I smelled like antiseptic and exhaustion. I had dark circles under my eyes that no concealer could hide. That was when the resentment began. Not loud or dramatic. Just quiet. Buried. Growing like a root system beneath everything else. I remember standing in my childhood kitchen, washing dishes from the party I hadn't wanted, listening to Ryan and Tessa laugh in the living room about some inside joke from their trip. And I remember thinking, they have no idea what I gave up for them. And they never would. They think I'm unemployed. That's the funniest part, really. The most absurd irony of this entire situation. For years now, my entire family has operated under the quiet assumption that I'm drifting through life, struggling, even. Probably working some dead-end retail job or maybe freelancing in some vague, unsuccessful way. I never corrected them because, honestly, what would be the point? The last family dinner I attended was 2 years ago. It was Dad's birthday, and Mom had made her famous pot roast, the one she only makes for special occasions. The table was full. Aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone talking over each other in that chaotic way large families do. Tessa had been holding court, as usual, talking about her job as a senior account coordinator at some mid-tier marketing firm called Hartwell and Associates. She kept emphasizing the word senior like it was a magic incantation that would transform her mediocre position into something impressive. "We're handling the Bronson account now," she'd said, gesturing with her wine glass. 7 figures. It's a lot of responsibility, but someone has to step up, you know? Everyone had nodded, impressed. Mom had beamed. "You're doing so well, Tessa. We're so proud of you." Then Tessa had turned to me, wine glass tilted in mock curiosity, her smile edged with something sharper. "And, Emily, what are you up to these days? Still figuring things out?" The table had gone quiet. Everyone waiting. Watching. I could have told them the truth. I could have explained that I'd spent the last 7 years systematically building a career in corporate strategy, that I'd climbed from junior analyst to senior analyst to project lead to director, that my salary had more zeros than Tessa's would ever see, that I'd just closed a deal worth more than their house. But I didn't. "Something like that," I'd said, taking a sip of water. Tessa had smiled, sweet, pitying, satisfied. "Well, some people are just late bloomers. There's no shame in that. Everyone finds their path eventually." Aunt Linda had chimed in. "You're still young, Emily. Plenty of time to figure out what you want to do." I was 30 years old. I was already doing it. I'd left before dessert, citing a headache. No one tried to stop me. After that, I stopped going to family events altogether. Stopped answering most of their calls. Stopped trying to be part of a group that had already decided I didn't fit. Peace, I learned, is quieter than explanations. And dignity doesn't require an audience. The next morning I woke at 6, the way I always do. My internal clock doesn't need an alarm anymore. The apartment, a sleek, high-rise space on the 23rd floor with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the downtown skyline, was bathed in the soft gold light of early morning. I'd bought this place 3 years ago, paid in cash, and decorated it exactly the way I wanted: clean lines, neutral colors, carefully chosen art pieces that actually meant something to me. It was mine.
Entire mine.
No one in my family had ever seen it. I moved through my routine with practiced precision: a 20-minute shower, skincare that I'd finally learned to invest in, hair pulled back into a sleek low bun. I selected a tailored navy suit from my closet, the one I'd had custom-made last year. It fit like armor. Professional. Powerful. Untouchable. I stood in front of my full-length mirror and looked at myself. Really looked. The woman staring back bore little resemblance to the exhausted, overlooked girl who'd sat in hospital waiting rooms. She looked like someone who knew exactly who she was. At 7:15, my phone buzzed. Marcus. Cars downstairs, Ms. Hale. I grabbed my leather briefcase, Italian, a gift to myself after my last promotion, and headed down. Marcus had been my driver for 2 years now. He was in his 50s, always impeccably dressed, and treated me with a respect that still sometimes caught me off guard. He was waiting beside the black SUV, door already open. "Morning, Miss Hale," he said with a nod. "Morning, Marcus." I slid into the back seat, and he closed the door with a soft, expensive click. As we pulled into downtown traffic, I checked my schedule on my tablet. The day was packed: 8:30 meeting with the analytics team, 10 o'clock budget review, lunch with a potential vendor, then the big one, the contract signing with a new client at 2 p.m. I'd been preparing for this meeting for weeks. The potential partnership was worth somewhere in the neighborhood of $3.5 million over 3 years, and my firm, Harrington Strategic Group, had fought hard to land it. Everything needed to be perfect. Every detail airtight. I opened the client file on my tablet, scrolling through the details one more time, even though I'd already memorized most of it. The company, Hartwell and Associates, was a mid-sized marketing firm looking to expand into corporate consulting. They wanted to add strategic infrastructure, market analysis, and long-term planning to their service offerings. It was ambitious for a company their size, but potentially lucrative if executed correctly. We'd be providing the framework, the expertise, the systems they'd need to make that leap. I scrolled to the personnel section, checking the names of the representatives who'd be attending the meeting. The CEO, Marcus Hartwell. The CFO, someone named David Chin. And their lead account coordinator, who'd be presenting the proposal, and I stopped scrolling. My heart stuttered. Tessa Harper, senior account coordinator, lead representative. I read the name 3 times, certain I'd misread. But no, there it was, clear as day, in 12-point Calibri font. My sister-in-law. The woman who, less than 12 hours ago, had called me an embarrassment in a group chat. The woman my entire family had laughed about excluding. She would be sitting across from me in 7 hours. For a long moment, I just stared at the screen. Traffic sounds filtered through the car windows, horns, engines, the pulse of the city waking up. Marcus turned a corner smoothly, and my tablet nearly slipped from my hands. I tightened my grip. 1,000 thoughts cascaded through my mind. I could excuse myself from the meeting. Pass it to Richard or Sylvia, both excellent directors who'd be perfectly capable of handling the contract. I could avoid the entire situation, keep my professional life and my family life in their separate, carefully maintained boxes. But then I remembered the group chat. The laughing emojis. Ryan's casual agreement. The years of being dismissed, overlooked, treated like I was somehow less than. A slow smile tugged at the corners of my lips.
No.
I wouldn't avoid this. I wouldn't hide. For once, I would let the truth reveal itself exactly the way it needed to. I pulled out my phone and texted my assistant, Jordan. Me. For the 2 p.m. meeting with Hartwell and Associates. Don't introduce me by name until everyone's seated. Just bring them to the conference room and tell them I'll be with them shortly. 3 dots appeared immediately. Jordan. Understood. Any particular reason? I paused, considering my response. Me. Let's call it a surprise. Jordan, you got it, boss. I set my phone down and looked out the window at the city streaming past. My reflection ghosted in the glass, calm, composed, ready. This was going to be interesting. I've worked at Harrington Strategic Group for 10 years. A full decade of my life poured into this place. I started as a junior analyst when I was barely 24 years old, still reeling from the years I'd lost to caregiving, still grieving the graduate program I'd had to abandon. I showed up to my first day wearing a suit from Target and shoes that pinched my feet, carrying ambition like a chip on my shoulder. I was hungry in a way that scared some people. Focused. Relentless. I couldn't afford to fail because failure meant proving my family right, that I was going nowhere, that I'd wasted those years for nothing. So, I didn't fail. I worked longer hours than anyone else. I said yes to every project, every opportunity, every weekend assignment. When senior analysts went home at 6, I stayed until 9, teaching myself advanced modeling software and market analysis techniques from YouTube videos and industry journals. I rose fast. Junior analyst to associate analyst in 18 months. Associate to senior analyst in 2 years. Senior analyst to project lead in 3. By the time I was 29, I was managing teams and pitching directly to C-suite executives. I was the person they called when a client relationship was failing, when a strategy needed a complete overhaul, when nobody else could figure out the solution. And then, 5 years ago, I was offered the director position for our strategic development division. I remember sitting in the CEO's office when he made the offer. Gerald Donovan, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, had looked at me across his massive desk and said, "You're the youngest person we've ever considered for this role. Some of the board members think you're not ready. Prove them wrong." I did. I've led initiatives that reshaped entire companies. I've negotiated deals worth more than most people will earn in their entire lifetimes. I've built a team that respects me not because of my title, but because of the work I do, the way I lead, the standards I hold everyone, including myself, to. My salary has more zeros than I ever dreamed possible when I was that exhausted girl washing dishes at Dad's welcome home party. But I keep my life intensely private. No LinkedIn profile with smiling headshots. No Twitter presence sharing industry insights. No Instagram stories from corporate events. I don't attend the industry galas or the networking cocktail parties where everyone schmoozes and exchanges business cards. I do my work. I do it brilliantly. And I go home. My team knows almost nothing about my personal life. Jordan, my assistant, knows I don't like small talk, and I take my coffee black. Sylvia, one of my fellow directors, knows I prefer morning meetings and that I'm vicious about keeping conferences on schedule. Richard knows I have a photographic memory for numbers and a low tolerance for excuses. None of them know about Ryan or Tessa. None of them know about the family that thinks I'm unemployed. None of them know that the confident, composed woman who runs board meetings is the same person who gets mocked in group chats. I've built walls between my professional life and my personal life so high and so thick that they might as well be separate universes. Until today. Today, those worlds were about to collide in the most spectacular way possible. And I was ready. At 1:45 p.m., I stood in front of the mirror in my office bathroom, adjusting my blazer. My reflection stared back, calm, composed, unreadable. I wasn't nervous. I was ready. I walked to the conference room and took my seat at the head of the long glass table. Jordan had already set out the presentation materials, water glasses, notepads. Everything gleamed. I folded my hands and waited. At exactly 2 o'clock, the door opened. Jordan stepped in first, professional smile in place. "Your 2 o'clock is here." Then came Tessa. She swept into the room like she owned it, designer handbag, tailored dress, heels that clicked against the marble floor. Confidence radiated from every movement. Behind her, Ryan followed, looking uncomfortable in a suit that didn't quite fit right. Tessa didn't look at me, not really. Her eyes skimmed over me the way you'd glance at a piece of office furniture. Then she stopped, blinked. Her gaze snapped back. Her expression shifted through confusion, recognition, disbelief. The color drained from her face. I smiled.
Calm.
Professional. "Welcome," I said evenly. Please have a seat. Ryan's mouth fell open. He froze mid-step, staring at me like I'd materialized out of thin air.
Emily.
His voice cracked. You work here? I tilted my head slightly. I run this division. Silence crashed into the room. Tessa made a sound, a choked, strangled noise somewhere between a gasp and a whimper. Then, as if her body couldn't contain the shock, she let out a scream. Not loud, but sharp enough that heads turned outside the glass walls. Jordan, still standing by the door, didn't even flinch. He'd worked with me long enough to know when to stay silent. Tessa's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide and wild. She looked at Ryan, then back at me, then at the nameplate in front of my seat. Emily Hale, Director of Strategic Development. Oh my God, she whispered. I gestured to the chairs across from me. Shall we begin? The silence stretched long enough to become uncomfortable. Tessa finally sank into a chair, her movements stiff, mechanical. Ryan sat beside her, looking like he wanted to disappear into the floor. I opened the folder in front of me, calm and methodical.
So,
Hartwell and Associates is looking to expand its consulting services. You've submitted a proposal outlining infrastructure needs, market positioning, and growth projections for the next 3 years.
my voice was steady, businesslike.
Tessa nodded, but she didn't speak. Her hands trembled as she reached for her own folder. Let's start with your market analysis, I continued. I flipped to page 3 of her proposal and paused. You've projected a 15% growth rate in year 1. Can you walk me through the data that supports that estimate? Tessa cleared her throat.
Once. Twice.
Yes. We base that on industry trends and... Which industry trends specifically? She faltered. The general upward movement in corporate consulting. I leaned back in my chair. General upward movement isn't a data point, Ms. Harper. Do you have quarterly reports? Competitor analysis? Market saturation studies? Her face flushed. We have some of that. Some? Ryan jumped in, his voice too loud. Look, Emily, maybe we can. I held up a hand, cutting him off with a look. Mr. Harper, I assume you're here in a support capacity. Unless you're listed as a representative of Hartwell and Associates, I'll need you to let Ms. Harper speak for herself. His mouth snapped shut. I turned back to Tessa. Your projections also assume minimal market competition. But you're entering a field with at least a dozen established firms. How do you plan to differentiate? She stammered through an answer, something vague about personalized service and innovative approaches. It was buzzword soup. Empty. Unsubstantiated. I dismantled it piece by piece. Every question I asked exposed another gap in her research. Every number I challenged revealed another careless assumption. It wasn't personal. It was professional. But the effect was devastating. By the time we reached the budget section, Tessa looked like she might cry. Your operational costs are underestimated by at least 30%, I said, sliding a corrected spreadsheet across the table. And your client acquisition strategy has no contingency for seasonal fluctuation. Tessa stared at the numbers, her lips pressed into a thin line. Ryan shifted in his seat. Emily, come on. You don't have to be so thorough. I met his eyes. This is a multi-million-dollar decision, Ryan. Thoroughness isn't optional. Around the table, my team members exchanged glances. They knew this was my family. But no one said a word. We took a 15-minute break. Tessa practically fled the room, Ryan trailing after her. Jordan approached me quietly. You okay, Miss Hale? I nodded.
Fine.
That was impressive. I allowed myself a small smile. Just doing my job. But inside, my heart was pounding. When they returned, Tessa had reapplied her lipstick and fixed her hair, but the cracks were still visible. She sat down stiffly, avoiding my gaze. Shall we continue? I asked. She nodded. I walked them through the rest of the proposal, pointing out structural weaknesses, financial inconsistencies, and strategic blind spots. It wasn't cruel. It was honest. And honesty in this case was damning. By the end of the meeting, it was clear. Hartwell and Associates wasn't ready for this partnership. I closed my folder and folded my hands. Thank you for your time today. My team and I will review everything and provide our decision within the week. Tessa's face went pale. Within the week? Standard protocol. Ryan leaned forward. Emily, can we talk? Privately? I kept my expression neutral. If you have questions about the proposal, you can submit them through the formal channel. Jordan will provide you with the contact information. Emily. Ms. Hale. I corrected gently.
His jaw tightened.
I stood, signaling the end of the meeting. Jordan will show you out. Thank you again for coming. Tessa and Ryan stood slowly, like people walking away from a car crash. As they reached the door, Tessa turned back, her eyes shining with something between fury and desperation. This isn't over, she said quietly. I met her gaze, unwavering. In a professional capacity, Ms. Harper, it very much is. They left. The door clicked shut, and for the first time in years, I felt the weight lift. 3 days later, I sent my formal recommendation to the executive team, declined the partnership. It wasn't personal. Tessa's proposal was genuinely flawed, underfunded, under-researched, built on optimism rather than strategy. Any competent director would have reached the same conclusion. But I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel good. The decision was approved within an hour. That evening, my phone exploded. First, Ryan. 7 missed calls. Then my mother. What did you do? Then my father. We need to talk. Now. I ignored them all and poured myself a glass of wine. I was halfway through it when someone started pounding on my door. I sighed, set the glass down, and walked to the entryway. Through the peephole, I saw Ryan, red-faced and furious. I opened the door. Are you kidding me? He shouted before I could say a word. You tanked our deal because you're jealous. I stepped aside.
Come in, Ryan.
Let's not do this in the hallway. He stormed past me, pacing like a caged animal. Do you have any idea what you just did? Tessa's company was counting on that partnership. We were counting on it. I closed the door and turned to face him. The proposal was inadequate. That's not an opinion, it's a fact. Inadequate. He laughed bitterly. You're unbelievable. You've been hiding this whole time, pretending to be some nobody, and then you swoop in and destroy us the second you get the chance. I didn't destroy anything, I said quietly. I did my job. Your job. His voice cracked. Your job is to humiliate your own family? My job, I said, my voice hardening, is to protect my company from bad investments. Which is exactly what Tessa's proposal was. He stepped closer, his face inches from mine. You've always been like this. Always thinking you're better than everyone else. I held his gaze. When did you start believing I wasn't? That stopped him. His mouth opened, then closed. For a moment, he looked lost. When Dad got sick, I said, filling the silence. Where were you? Emily. When I was 23, sitting in a hospital room, making medical decisions I wasn't ready to make. Where were you? That's not fair. You're right. It's not fair. None of it was fair. My voice stayed calm, but something sharp edged into it. I gave up years of my life. And you gave up nothing. You didn't even say thank you. Ryan's face flushed. I didn't ask you to do that.
No.
You just let me. The silence between us felt like a living thing. Finally, he shook his head. This isn't about Dad. This is about you being petty. I almost laughed. Petty. Right. Tell me, Ryan, when Tessa called me an embarrassment in the group chat, did you defend me? His expression flickered. Did you tell her that was cruel? Did you tell Mom and Dad to stop laughing? He looked away. No, I said. You agreed with her. You thought it was for the best. I didn't mean. You did. I stepped back, suddenly exhausted. You absolutely did. Ryan stood there, fists clenched, breathing hard. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out. The door slammed behind him. I stood in the silence, staring at the place he'd been. Then I picked up my wine glass and returned to the window. The next day, my parents called. I let it go to voicemail. Then I listened. Mom's voice tight and strained. Emily, we need to talk about what happened with Ryan and Tessa. This is getting out of hand. Call us back. I deleted it. Dad called an hour later. I let that one go to voicemail too. Emily. His voice was gruff, uncomfortable. Your mother's upset. Ryan told us what you did. I don't know what's going on with you, but this needs to stop. Family comes first. Always. Call me. I deleted that one too. Then I did something I'd never done before. I opened a text to both of them and typed, Me. I'm a director at Harrington Strategic Group. I have been for 5 years. Before that, I spent 7 years building my career, while you all assumed I was doing nothing. I turned down Tessa's proposal because it was professionally unsound, not because of personal grudges. If you'd like to verify this, you can look me up. But I'm done defending myself to people who never believed in me to begin with. I attached a photo of my office nameplate. Then I hit send. The response was immediate. 3 dots. Appearing. Disappearing. Appearing again. Then nothing. The silence stretched for hours. No calls.
No texts.
Nothing. It was the longest silence I'd ever heard from them. And somehow, it hurt more than the laughter had. 2 days later, Tessa's parents got involved. They were wealthy, old money, the kind that opens doors with phone calls instead of knocks. And apparently, they decided to use that power. I got a call from our CEO's assistant. Ms. Hale, Mr. Donovan would like to see you. My stomach tightened. When? Now, if possible. I walked into his office 5 minutes later. Gerald Donovan was a man in his early 60s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. Emily.
Sit. Y set.
He leaned back, fingers steepled. I received a call this morning from Charles and Diane Harper, Tessa's parents. They expressed concerns about our decision regarding the Hartwell partnership. I kept my face neutral. What kind of concerns? They suggested that personal bias may have influenced your recommendation. My jaw tightened. It didn't. I know. He said it simply, matter of fact. I reviewed your analysis myself. It was thorough, objective, and correct. Hartwell's proposal had serious structural flaws. Relief flooded through me. However, he continued, the Harpers are influential. They've made it clear they expect us to reconsider. I met his eyes. With respect, sir, integrity isn't negotiable. A smile ghosted across his face. I was hoping you'd say that. He leaned forward. I told him the same thing. In more diplomatic terms, of course. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. His expression turned serious. This may not be over. People like the Harpers don't take no gracefully. I nodded. I understand. Good. He stood, signaling the end of the meeting. Keep doing what you're doing, Emily. You're one of the best directors we have. I left his office feeling lighter. But the relief was short-lived. Because that night, Ryan showed up again. And this time, he wasn't alone. I heard the knocking at 8:47 p.m.
Loud.
Insistent. The kind that said they weren't planning to leave. I set down my book, though I hadn't absorbed a single word in the past hour, and walked to the door. Through the peephole, I saw Ryan and Tessa standing in my hallway. Her arms were crossed tight across her chest, her face set in barely controlled rage. Ryan looked more determined than I'd seen him in years. I took a breath and opened the door. We need to talk, Ryan said without preamble. I don't think we have anything left to say. I started to close the door. Tessa wedged her expensive shoe firmly in the gap. You destroyed my career. I looked down at her foot, then slowly back up to meet her eyes. I declined a business proposal. That's not the same thing. You wanted revenge, and you got it. Her voice shook with fury. This wasn't about revenge. Liar. You've been waiting for this. Waiting for a chance to humiliate me in front of everyone. I stepped back and gestured them inside. If you're going to yell, at least come inside so my neighbors don't call security. They entered. Tessa immediately started pacing across my hardwood floors. Ryan stood near the door, arms crossed defensively. You could have approved the deal, Tessa said, spinning to face me. You could have helped us. But instead, you chose to embarrass me in front of your entire team. I asked legitimate questions about a flawed proposal. Flawed? It was good enough for 3 other firms to express serious interest. Then take it to one of them. Her jaw clenched visibly. We did. They all passed after the Harrington rejection. Apparently, your professional opinion carries significant weight in this industry. I sat down on my sofa, suddenly exhausted. Tessa, I didn't set out to hurt you, but I'm not going to risk millions of dollars and my professional reputation on a proposal that doesn't meet our standards. Any competent director would have reached the same conclusion. Your impossibly high standards that nobody can possibly meet. I mean industry standards, basic due diligence, market research that goes beyond wishful thinking. Ryan spoke up. We get it. You're successful now. You've made that very clear. But did you have to destroy Tessa in the process? I looked at my brother carefully. When had he become this person? I didn't destroy anyone, I said quietly. I evaluated a business proposal according to professional standards and found it insufficient. That's my job. That's what I'm paid to do. It's also convenient, Tessa said bitterly. The woman you hate just happens to have a bad proposal. I don't hate you, Tessa. Could have fooled me. I stood, my patience finally reaching its limit. You called me an embarrassment. In front of my entire family. In a group chat. And they all laughed. Every single one of them. So no, I don't hate you. But I don't owe you anything either. Not my professional judgment, and certainly not a $3 million partnership your company wasn't remotely ready for. Tessa's face crumpled for just a moment, showing something vulnerable beneath all that anger. Then she straightened her shoulders and lifted her chin in defiance. This isn't over, Emily. You think you've won, but you have no idea what's coming for you. Something in her tone, cold, certain, almost threatening, made my skin prickle with warning. What's that supposed to mean? She smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. You'll see. Soon enough. Then she turned sharply and walked out. Ryan followed behind her without another word, without even looking back at me. The door closed with a final click. I stood alone in the sudden silence of my apartment, that prickle of unease growing and spreading through my chest, transforming into something cold and certain. Whatever Tessa was planning, it wasn't going to be a simple family argument or just another angry confrontation. This was about to escalate into something far worse. The knock came at 8:30 on a Thursday night. I set my book aside and walked to the door, already knowing who I'd find. Ryan stood in the hallway with Tessa, her face pale and drawn, mascara smudged beneath red-rimmed eyes. We need to talk, Ryan said. I stepped aside. 5 minutes. They entered like convicts approaching a sentencing. Tessa's hands twisted together. Ryan would meet my eyes. I crossed my arms. What do you want?
I'm sorry, Tessa whispered.
I'm sorry for what I said in the group chat. For everything. I was wrong about you. It sounded rehearsed. Okay, I said flatly. Ryan stepped forward. Emily, please. Tessa's company is in real trouble. If we don't get this partnership, they're going under. That's not my problem. She's family. His voice rose. Doesn't that mean anything? I stared at him. Family? Like when you all laughed at me in that group chat. Like when Dad was recovering and you were in Italy. That kind of family? Tessa flinched. I'm not doing this to hurt you, I said. But I can't approve a partnership that would damage my company just because we're related. There has to be something. There isn't. They left 10 minutes later, Tessa crying, Ryan silent and furious. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The call came 3 days later at 7 a.m. Emily, I need you in my office. Now, Donovan said, his voice clipped. My stomach dropped. What's wrong? Just get here. 20 minutes later, I walked into his office to find 3 senior board members waiting. Sit, Donovan said. He slid a folder across the desk. Inside were security logs showing my name attached to a data access request for confidential files at 2:47 a.m. 2 nights ago. My blood ran cold. I didn't do this, I said immediately.
We know, Donovan said.
But someone used your credentials. I scanned the logs. The terminal ID looked familiar. Then it hit me, Ryan's device from months ago when I'd let him use my laptop. Oh my God, I whispered. Patricia Chun, our chief legal officer, leaned forward. Ms. Hale, this is serious. Until we verify you weren't involved, we have a problem. How long do I have? 48 hours to prove your innocence, she said. Otherwise, we'll have to suspend you. 10 years of spotless work, potentially gone because of Ryan. I'll find the proof, I said. I left the building in a daze. Marcus, my driver, took one look at my face and didn't ask questions. He just opened the car door and drove me home in silence. Back in my apartment, I paced like a caged animal, my mind racing through options. I needed proof that Ryan had done this without my knowledge or consent. But how? The access had come from a device I'd authorized. Any lawyer would argue I was complicit. I tore through my files, searching for anything that might help. Email logs, calendar entries, anything that proved I hadn't known about Ryan's plans. I found the guest network logs showing when I'd registered his device. I found my work logs showing I'd been actively working from home at the exact time of the breach attempt. It was circumstantial, but it was something. Then my phone buzzed. An unknown number. A text message with a file attachment. My finger hovered over it. Unknown numbers never meant anything good, but I opened it anyway. The file was an audio recording. I pressed play and Ryan's voice filled my quiet apartment. If we can access her system, we can make it look like she's the one who screwed up. Plant just enough doubt that her firm has to reconsider our proposal. Tessa's voice uncertain. Ryan, I don't know. If we get caught. We won't get caught, Ryan interrupted. I still have access from that device she let me use months ago. She never logs out of anything. She trusts me. This feels wrong. She destroyed our future. Ryan's voice rose, angry. She sat there in that conference room and humiliated you. Humiliated us. She deserves this, Tessa. She's had everything handed to her, and she threw us away like we're nothing. But what if? No what ifs. We do this, we create enough chaos that they have to give us another chance. It's the only way. The recording ended. I played it again. Then a third time. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. Someone had recorded Ryan and Tessa planning to sabotage me. Someone had sent it to me anonymously. Who?
Why?
I didn't have time to figure it out. I forwarded the file to my personal lawyer, Caroline Reese, with a message. Is this admissible as evidence? Her response came 20 minutes later. Yes. And what's on this recording constitutes felony-level cybercrime. Computer fraud, attempted data theft, conspiracy. Emily, this is serious. What do you want to do? I stared at her message for a long time. What did I want? I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to confront Ryan and ask him how he could do this to me. But more than anything, I wanted my life back. I didn't send the recording to Donovan immediately. I should have. It would have cleared my name instantly, removed all doubt, restored my reputation. But something held me back. Maybe it was shock. Maybe it was the part of me that still couldn't believe my own brother had tried to destroy me. Or maybe I just wanted to be strategic. I called Caroline and asked her to meet me the next morning. We needed to handle this carefully, with precision. One wrong move, and this could explode in ways I couldn't predict. While I was planning my next steps, Ryan and Tessa were making their own moves. The call from my mother came that evening, her voice shrill with accusation. Emily Marie Hale. What is going on with you? I closed my eyes. Hello, Mom. Ryan just told us what you're doing. How could you? How could you try to frame your own brother for something you did? My jaw dropped. What? Don't play innocent with me. Her voice climbed higher. He told us everything. How you're trying to pin some computer breach on him because your company is investigating you. How you're using him as a scapegoat because you can't handle the consequences of your own actions. I almost laughed. The audacity was breathtaking. Mom, that's not what happened. I don't want to hear your excuses. You've always been jealous of Ryan, but this is beyond the pale. This is vindictive and cruel, And I didn't raise you to be this person. You didn't raise me at all, I said quietly. The line went silent. What did you say to me? I said you didn't raise me. I raised myself. While Ryan was out living his best life, I was the one sitting in hospital rooms with Dad. I was the one making sure he took his medications, went to his appointments, had someone to talk to. Where were you, Mom? Where was Ryan? That's not fair. It's completely fair. And now Ryan's trying to destroy my career because he can't handle his own failures, and you're blaming me without even asking for my side of the story. Emily, I'm done, Mom. I'm done explaining myself to people who've already decided I'm the villain. I hung up. My hands were shaking again. I sat down on the couch and wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly feeling very cold. For the first time in years, I let myself cry. The next morning, I met Caroline at a coffee shop 3 blocks from my office. She was already there when I arrived, a file folder open in front of her. Caroline Reese was a sharp woman in her mid-40s, with steel-gray hair cut in a precise bob and eyes that missed nothing. I've listened to the recording 5 times, she said without preamble. Verified it with an audio forensics expert. It's authentic. And you have everything you need to clear your name and put your brother in prison. She slid a document across the table. This outlines the potential charges. Unauthorized computer access. Attempted data theft.
Wide fraud.
Conspiracy. If the DA decides to prosecute, Ryan's looking at serious time. I stared at the document. What about Tessa? Accessory. She could face charges too, but Ryan's the primary actor here. I took a sip of coffee, buying time to think. What happens if I use this to clear my name but don't press criminal charges? Caroline leaned back, studying me. Then you protect your career, restore your reputation, and your brother lives with the knowledge that you could destroy him at any moment. It's leverage. Is that what you do? I'm not you, Emily. But if you want my professional opinion?
Yes.
Clear your name first. Decide about criminal charges later. Give yourself options. I nodded slowly. Okay, let's do that. There's something else you should know. Caroline pulled out her phone and showed me a news alert. Hartwell and Associates filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy this morning. Tessa's company is officially done. I read the headline twice, feeling a strange emptiness. I'd won, but it didn't feel like victory. An hour later, I walked into Donovan's office with Caroline at my side. Patricia Chun and the other board members were already assembled. They looked tense, worried, probably expecting me to come in empty-handed, ready to be suspended. I set a folder on Donovan's desk. This is the device registration log showing when my brother accessed my network, I said, my voice calm and professional. This is the timestamp correlation between his visit to my apartment and when the device was first registered. And this. I placed my phone on the table and pressed play. Ryan's voice filled the office. If we can access her system, we can make it look like she's the one who screwed up. The recording played all the way through. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. When it ended, the silence was absolute. Patricia Chen's face had gone pale. Marcus Whitfield looked furious. Jennifer Rao was taking rapid notes on her tablet. Donovan sat back heavily in his chair, his expression a mix of relief and anger. Where did you get this? He asked quietly. It was sent to me anonymously yesterday. My attorney has verified its authenticity. Patricia turned to Caroline. Are you pursuing criminal charges against the individuals in this recording? Caroline glanced at me. The question was mine to answer. Everyone waited. I took a slow breath, feeling the weight of the moment. No, I said finally. I'm not pressing criminal charges. Surprise rippled through the room. But, I continued, I want formal documentation that I've been completely cleared of any wrongdoing. I want written confirmation from the board that my professional reputation is intact. And I want assurance that this incident will not impact my standing or future opportunities within this company. Done, Donovan said immediately. All of it. You have my word. Patricia nodded. I'll draft the documentation myself. You'll have it by end of business today. Thank you, I said quietly. As I stood to leave, Donovan called after me. Emily, I turned. You're a better person than most would be in this situation. His expression was sincere. You're better than they deserve. I didn't know how to respond to that, so I just nodded and left. I didn't tell my family about the recording right away. Instead, I spent 2 days thinking,
Processing.
deciding what I actually wanted from all of this. Revenge? Justice? An apology? None of those felt right. What I wanted was closure. And maybe, if I was lucky, a path forward. So I sent a group text to my parents, Ryan and Tessa. We need to talk. All of us. Saturday, 2 p.m., Giovanni's on 5th Street. Private dining room. Be there. Ryan responded immediately. Emily, please, we can explain. I didn't reply. Saturday arrived gray and drizzly. I got to the restaurant early and waited in the private dining room, watching rain streak down the windows. My parents arrived first. Dad looked tired, older than I remembered. Mom's face was tight with anxiety. Then came Ryan and Tessa. They both looked like they hadn't slept in days. Tessa's designer clothes hung loose on her frame. Ryan's eyes were red-rimmed. I was the only one who looked put together. I sat at the head of the table and waited for everyone to settle. Thank you for coming, I said quietly. Mom opened her mouth to speak, but I held up a hand.
Please.
Let me finish first. She closed her mouth. I looked at Ryan. You used my network credentials to try to sabotage my career. You attempted to steal confidential data and frame me for a crime I didn't commit. I have proof. A recording of you and Tessa planning the whole thing. Ryan's face went white. Tessa made a small, choked sound. My parents stared, frozen. I could have turned that recording over to the police. I continued. My lawyer says you'd be looking at felony charges. Prison time. But I didn't. Ryan's shoulders sagged with relief. Premature, desperate relief. However, I said, my voice hardening, I'm also done being the family punching bag. Done being the one you call when it's convenient and mock when it's not. Done being invisible until you need something. I pressed play on my phone. The recording filled the room. Ryan's voice. Tessa's uncertain responses. The casual way he talked about destroying my career. My mother covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. My father's expression shifted from confusion to horror to rage. When the recording ended, the silence in the room felt like a physical presence. Dad turned to Ryan, his voice shaking with barely controlled fury. How could you do this to your sister? Ryan stared at the table, his hands clenched together so tightly his knuckles had gone white. He opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. I don't know. I was angry, desperate. I felt like everything was falling apart and Emily had all the answers, all the success, and she wouldn't help us. So, you tried to destroy her? Dad's voice rose. You tried to frame your own sister for a crime? I wasn't thinking clearly. That's not good enough. Dad slammed his hand on the table, making everyone jump. I'd never seen him this angry. Emily sacrificed years of her life taking care of me while you were off living yours. And this is how you repay her. Ryan's face crumpled. I know. God, I know. Tessa finally broke the silence, her voice small and broken. I told him it was wrong.
I did.
But I went along with it anyway. She looked at me, tears falling freely. I've been so jealous of you, Emily. For years. Even before I knew who you really were. You have this quiet strength, this self-assurance. You don't need anyone's approval. And I've spent my whole life chasing validation from everyone, my parents, my colleagues, strangers on social media. That doesn't excuse what you did, I said, my voice calm despite the emotion churning inside me. I know. Nothing excuses it. But I need you to understand. When I found out the truth about your career, it completely shattered me. Everything I'd built my identity on was a lie. I wasn't better than you. I'd never been better than you. And instead of being happy for you, instead of celebrating your success, I felt threatened. Small. Like a fraud. She wiped her eyes, mascara streaking down her cheeks. That group chat message, calling you an embarrassment, that was me projecting all my own insecurities onto you. Because if I could make you smaller in everyone else's eyes, maybe I wouldn't feel so inadequate. I absorbed her words, feeling a strange mix of anger and pity. Mom spoke up then, her voice trembling. Emily, we've been terrible parents to you. I looked at her. Really looked. She seemed to have aged 10 years in the past few weeks. When Ryan called us and said you were trying to frame him, we didn't question it, she continued. We just believed him. Because somewhere along the way, we stopped seeing you clearly. We made assumptions about who you were and what you were capable of, and we never bothered to look deeper. You didn't want to look deeper, I said quietly, because it was easier to believe I was the problem. Easier to assume I'd failed rather than succeeded. Easier to think I was unemployed and drifting than to acknowledge that maybe, just maybe, I'd built something you couldn't see. Dad's voice cracked. When did we become these people? I don't know, Dad. But you did. Mom reached for my hand across the table. I pulled away, not cruelly, but firmly. I'm not ready for that yet, I said. I don't need apologies, I said. I need change. Real change. Silence fell over the table like a weight. I'm not pressing criminal charges, I said finally. But I'm also done being the person you dump on when life gets hard. If you want me in your life, it's going to be on equal terms. Respect. Honesty. No more group chat mockery. No more assumptions. Dad nodded slowly, tears in his eyes. You're right. You've always been right, and we've been too blind to see it. Ryan finally looked up, his face wet with tears. I'm so sorry, Emily. I know that doesn't fix anything. I know I've been a terrible brother. I let my jealousy and insecurity turn me into someone I don't recognize. Yes, I said simply. You did. He flinched. But you're still my brother, I added, softer now. And if you genuinely want to change, if you want to be better, then I'll give you the chance. One chance. He nodded, unable to speak. I stood. I'm leaving now. If you want to rebuild this family, you know where to find me. But I'm not chasing you anymore. The choice is yours. I walked out of the restaurant without looking back. 3 weeks passed. I threw myself into work, pushing the family drama to the back of my mind. My cleared name had been formally documented. My reputation was intact. Life returned to normal. Then Donovan called me into his office again. This time when I entered, he was smiling. Emily.
Seat. Iset, Cuis.
The board met yesterday, he said, leaning back in his chair. We've been discussing our executive structure. The company's expanding, and we need strong leadership at the VP level. My heart started beating faster. We'd like to offer you the position of Vice President of Strategic Development. The words hung in the air. Vice President. I dreamed of this. Worked toward it for years. The promotion comes with a significant salary increase, stock options, and a seat at the executive table, Donovan continued. You've more than earned it, Emily. What happened with your family, the way you handled that situation with integrity and professionalism, it only confirmed what we already knew. You're exactly the kind of leader this company needs. I stared at him, momentarily unable to speak. So, he prompted, smiling. What do you say? I accept, I said, my voice steady despite the emotion welling in my chest. Thank you. I won't let you down. I know you won't. The promotion ceremony was held 2 weeks later in the company's main conference hall. It was deliberately kept small, just senior leadership, the board members who'd stood by me, and my immediate team. The room had been decorated simply but elegantly. White flowers, soft lighting, a podium with a company logo backlit against the wall. I stood at that podium and looked out at the faces watching me. Jordan, my assistant, who'd been with me since I was a junior analyst, sat in the front row. His eyes were slightly red. I suspected he'd teared up during Donovan's introduction speech. Patricia Chin sat beside him, the woman who'd questioned me during the investigation but had also been the first to draft my exoneration papers. She gave me a small, approving nod. Marcus Whitfield and Jennifer Rao were there too, the security and risk management leads who'd helped uncover the truth. And in the very back of the room, partially hidden behind a decorative column, stood my parents. I hadn't invited them. I hadn't told them about this event at all. But somehow, probably through Jordan, who'd always been too soft-hearted. They'd found out. Dad wore his good suit, the navy one he saved for weddings and funerals. Mom had on a dress I'd never seen before, something elegant and understated. They both looked nervous, hopeful, out of place. I took a breath and began my speech. 3 months ago, I said, my voice carrying clearly through the room, I sat in an office much like this one and was told I had 48 hours to prove my innocence. That someone had tried to destroy my career, my reputation, everything I'd spent a decade building. Someone I trusted. Someone who should have protected me. The room was absolutely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. In that moment, I had a choice. I could have let anger guide me. I could have sought revenge, burned every bridge, made sure everyone involved paid the highest possible price the law would allow. I paused, letting the words sink in. But I didn't. Because I've learned something important over these past 10 years. Success isn't about proving people wrong. It's about proving yourself right. Jordan was definitely crying now, not even trying to hide it. Even Patricia looked moved, her normally stern expression softening. It's about knowing your own value even when nobody else does. It's about building yourself up even when others try to tear you down. It's about integrity, not because it's easy or convenient, but because it's who you choose to be when everything else is falling apart around you. My eyes found my parents in the back. Mom's hand was pressed to her mouth, tears already streaming down her face. Dad's jaw was clenched tight, fighting emotion the way men of his generation always did. They looked smaller somehow, older, filled with regret and pride in equal measure. The title on my door has changed, I continued, my voice strong and clear. But the person I am hasn't. I'm still the same woman who sat in hospital rooms making medical decisions I wasn't ready for. The same woman who worked late nights and early mornings to climb from analyst to director. The woman who chose character over convenience every single time. And I'll carry that same integrity into this new role. I looked back at Donovan and the board members. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for giving me the chance to prove myself. I won't let you down. The room erupted in applause. People stood. Jordan was openly sobbing. Patricia actually smiled, a real, warm smile I'd never seen from her before. And in the back, my parents stood too, clapping with everyone else, tears streaming down both their faces. After the ceremony, people came up to congratulate me. Jordan hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. Patricia shook my hand firmly and said, "You've earned every bit of this, Emily." Then the crowd parted, and my mother approached. She moved tentatively, like someone approaching a wild animal that might bolt. Dad hung back a few steps, giving her space. "Emily." Her voice was soft, almost reverent. "That was beautiful. You were beautiful. Thank you. We're so proud of you." She paused, her eyes glistening. "We should have said that years ago. We should have really seen you years ago." I looked at her, really looked. The lines around her eyes seemed deeper. Her hands trembled slightly. She looked older, more fragile. Human in a way I'd never quite noticed before. "You should have," I agreed, not unkindly. "We didn't raise you," she said, her voice cracking. "Not really. We were there physically, but we didn't nurture what you were becoming. We didn't see your strength, your brilliance, your incredible capacity for endurance and grace. You raised yourself, Emily. You became this extraordinary woman all on your own." It was the truest thing she'd ever said to me. "I did," I said. "But that doesn't mean we can't start over. If that's what you want." Hope flickered across her face like a candle flame in darkness. "Really? You'd give us that chance?" "On my terms," I said firmly. "No more assumptions. No more dismissing me. No more believing Ryan over me without asking my side. Equal respect. Real communication. Actual effort." She nodded quickly, eagerly.
Yes.
"Of course. Whatever you need. Whatever you want." Dad stepped forward then, and I saw that he'd been crying too. His eyes were red, his face blotchy. "We'll do better, Emily," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I swear to you, we'll do better. I don't know how we lost sight of who you were, but we did, and I'm sorrier than I can say. I know, Dad. You deserved better from us. You deserved better from all of us, and especially from me. He shook his head. When you were taking care of me after the stroke, I saw you. I saw how strong you were, how capable. But then I got better, and I just went back to the old patterns. Let your mother and Ryan influence how I saw you. I stopped defending you. Stopped believing in you. And that's unforgivable. It's not unforgivable, I said quietly. But it's going to take time to repair. I understand. We'll take whatever time you need. I wanted to believe them. I chose to try. Later that night, I stood alone in my new office. The space was stunning, larger than my old one, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city skyline. The lights of downtown twinkled like earthbound stars, stretching endlessly in all directions. I could see the river winding through the city, bridges lit up like necklaces of light connecting one shore to another. The office itself was minimalist but elegant. A glass desk, perfectly clean. Leather chairs for visitors. Built-in bookshelves waiting to be filled with my collection of strategy texts and business journals. And on the credenza behind the desk, a small photo I'd brought from home. One of the few pictures I had of Dad before his stroke, smiling at a family barbecue years ago, when things were simpler. My phone buzzed, pulling me from my thoughts. A text from Ryan. I'm starting therapy. I want to be better. I know I don't deserve another chance, but if you're ever willing to talk, I'm here. I'm going to work on myself. Really work. Not for you, or Mom, or Dad. For me. Because I need to become someone I can respect again. I stared at the message for a long time, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Part of me wanted to delete it, to block his number and move on. But another part, the part that remembered building blanket forts with him when we were kids, that remembered him teaching me to ride a bike, that part couldn't quite let go. Finally, I typed, one step at a time. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But it was acknowledgement. Recognition that people can change if they genuinely want to. That healing doesn't happen overnight, but it can happen gradually if both people are willing to try. I set the phone down and walked back to the window, looking out at the city. Behind me, the nameplate on my office door caught the light from the hallway.
Emily Hale.
Vice President, Strategic Development. I thought about the girl I used to be. The one who sat in hospital waiting rooms, exhausted and scared, wondering if she'd ever have a life of her own. The one who walked away from graduate school opportunities to care for family who would later mock her for it. The one who built herself in silence because she learned early that explanations weren't worth the energy. That girl had been strong in ways she didn't even realize at the time. And she'd become this woman, standing in a corner office on the 30th floor, respected by colleagues, trusted by leadership, finally seeing her own worth reflected back at her. I hadn't needed my family's validation to get here, but I'd needed their betrayal to finally stop seeking it. I turned off the office lights and walked to the elevator, my heels clicking rhythmically against the polished marble floor. The sound echoed in the empty hallway, confident, purposeful, certain. As I waited for the elevator, I glanced back one final time in my office. The nameplate gleamed. The girl they'd called an embarrassment. The sister they'd dismissed. The daughter they'd underestimated. The woman who'd proven them all wrong, not out of spite, but out of truth. I smiled. I'd built this life with my own hands. Brick by brick. Choice by choice. Sacrifice by sacrifice. Not for them. For me. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside confidently. And as I descended toward the lobby, toward Marcus waiting with a car, toward my apartment with its city views and hard-won peace, toward whatever tomorrow would bring, I felt something settle deep in my chest.
Peace.
Pure, genuine, hard-won peace. Not because my family finally saw me, but because I'd finally, truly seen myself. And I was enough. I'd always been enough. If your own family has ever made you feel invisible, would you use the moment they finally see you to prove them wrong, or to help them anyway? Hit that like button if the story resonated with you, and subscribe for more stories about finding your worth when the people closest to you can't see it.